Okay, so we want to start a micro distillery. We want to make an alcoholic distillate. We want to sell it to the general public. Well, we have to abide by some definitions, and we have to abide by some government legislation before we can do that. In Canada, the legal definitions for spirits are laid down by the Department of Justice, and that is all orchestrated in conjunction with the Canada Food Inspection Agency, and I'm pretty sure Revenue Canada and the Excise Agency are in there somewhere as well. But it seems to be the Department of Justice that has taken the lead on the application of spirit definitions. So, let's start with a typical definition. And this is the typical kind of wording that you will see in most of these definitions. This is the definition of something called a grain spirit. It is an alcoholic distillate, and it's made from a mash of cereal grain. Pretty straightforward. Saccharified by the diastase of malt or by other enzymes. Really what that means is if you're using malted barley or malted wheat, there are enzymes in that malted barley that will convert the starch into sugar. If you're not using a malted grain product, you may have to add other enzymes, artificial enzymes, and that's okay by definition. You can do that. You have to ferment by the action of yeast or other microorganisms. Again, pretty straightforward stuff. And finally, it says all or nearly all of the naturally occurring substances other than alcohol and water have been removed. So really and truly, what is a grain spirit? It's alcohol and water with not a lot of naturally occurring flavor, odor, aroma. Are there any microdistilleries that anybody has come across in Canada that is making a simple, plain grain spirit? I've found one. They're in Toronto, and they are called the Toronto Distillery Company. They're actually located in the city of Toronto. I think they're in the western part of the city, like around Spadina somewhere, if you're in Toronto. What they have come out with is a grain spirit made from 100% organic Ontario wheat. This one has puzzled me for a long time, and I think I'm figuring it out now, and I think I can see the method in their madness here. So here's the question. What would happen if this Toronto Distilling Company was to take this grain spirit and filter it through charcoal? What would they end up with? The answer is, by legal definition, they would end up with a vodka. So, if you're the Toronto Distilling Company, why wouldn't you take it one step further and just give it a charcoal filtration and call it Toronto Distillery Company vodka? Here's the answer. And if you're starting a microdistillery, you need to be painfully aware of this. Take a trip to your liquor store someday. Go to the section in the liquor store where they sell vodka. What do you find? Well, you've got, for starters, a few cheaper brands of vodka. Polar Ice is one that comes to mind, and there's other ones that will be on the shelf. You've got Smirnoff with their traditional red label. You've now got Smirnoff with their black, what do they call it, double black. You've got Absolute Vodka, Stolichnaya Vodka, Grey Goose Vodka. All of these major players have got several variations on taste. You've got lemon flavored vodka, raspberry vodka, vanilla vodka, cappuccino vodka, the list goes on. There's just a huge amount of shelf space in any liquor store devoted to vodka. If you're a microdistiller, do you really want to go onto that crowded playing field and run the risk of getting tackled to the ground? You're dealing with organizations like Smirnoff, like Grey Goose, like Stolichnaya, that have multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns, billboards in major cities, full-color ads in high-end magazines like Condé Nast Traveler is one that comes to mind. Can you, as a microdistiller in average town Canada, compete with that? Not likely. And I think these guys very quickly came to that conclusion. And so by not calling it a vodka, they have steered clear of an otherwise crowded playing field. Now there's a couple other things that they have done, and we're going to touch a little bit more on this later in the week when we do the marketing module. But what they've done, and if you'll notice, 100% organic Ontario wheat. So not only is it just a grain spirit, but what they've done is they've reached out to people who like organic food, organic drink, and they're saying here is an organic spirit. Is Smirnoff making an organic vodka? Is Grey Goose making an organic vodka? No, they're not. They're not. But these guys, by venturing into the realm of organic, they are going after that segment of the marketplace, and it is a growing segment that that favors organic food and organic drink. Now, they say on here that it's made from Ontario wheat. What they don't necessarily tell you in there is there's quite a historical connection on two fronts, really. In the early 1800s, when the Scottish, English, Irish settlers came to what was then Upper Canada, Ontario today, they brought with them a strain of wheat called Red Fife. And apparently what these guys have done is they have gone out somewhere in Ontario and they have found growers willing to grow Red Fife wheat. And so they've tapped into this historical connection. You know, if anybody's out there tracing their family roots and discovers that their great-great-grandfather came from Scotland in 1800 and homesteaded in Ontario, they're tapping into that emotional vein by using that old historical strain of wheat called Red Fife. Now, the other thing that they've done, distilled in the city of Toronto. What this doesn't immediately tell you is, in fact, in the, I believe it was the early 1900s, right before Prohibition, there actually was a distillery in downtown Toronto. And I do believe that that distillery was making what was then alcohol and water, some sort of a grain spirit. And so by situating themselves in downtown Toronto, again, they're tapping into that historical sentiment, that love for the past, that appreciation of history. And so they've really hit it on a number of different fronts. And so I guess don't let the fact that it's just a grain spirit throw you. I would dare say these guys are probably doing very well in their venture. And kudos to them, because they have sidestepped an otherwise crowded vodka field. And if there's one lesson that I want you to take away from this particular example, it is that vodka is a very, very difficult market, and you're dealing with some players that have got a lot of clout and a lot of muscle. Now, let's quickly move on to vodka. Vodka is a potable alcoholic beverage, and you're simply taking grain spirit, or by definition you can even take a potato spirit. You're treating it with charcoal, and what you're trying to do by charcoal filtering your spirit is you're trying to render the product without any distinctive character, aroma, or taste. Essentially, again, you're dealing with alcohol and water, but you've taken it one step further, and you've charcoal filtered. Now, in the U.S., if you happen to be traveling in the U.S., or if you happen to be in your liquor store shopping for vodka, you may notice a lot of it does come out of the U.S. And in the U.S., a vodka is a neutral spirit, and it's been treated with charcoal. Now, I want you to notice the difference here. In Canada, vodka is a grain spirit, which we know by definition is made from cereal grain. But in the U.S., a vodka is a spirit distilled from any material. There's a huge difference. If you're in the U.S., and you're strictly following this definition, you literally can get any material. You could go to a winery and you could purchase surplus grape juice that the winemaker doesn't have a market for. You could take that back to your distillery and you could ferment that into wine. You could run that wine through your still to extract the alcohol, and you could actually make a vodka out of surplus grape juice. Now, here's your typical Smirnoff made from grain, but check this bad boy out right here. This is called Ciroc, and it's owned by Diageo. It's out of the United States. What they have done is they have come out with, in the U.S., it's called a vodka, and it's made from fine French grapes. It's a little bit of a marketing shtick for you. But the Canadian authorities were very wise to their ways. And the Canadian authorities said, hold it just a minute. This is not made from a cereal grain. You are making this from surplus grape juice. Ergo, it does not meet